I remember that bright morning as if it were yesterday, standing on our spacious terrace overlooking the city from our luxurious home. The view was breathtaking. A tapestry of urban life spread out before me, but my heart was heavy with unspoken concerns. Gregory, my husband, stood beside me, his presence a stark contrast to the warmth of the morning sun. I broke the silence, my voice calm, but filled with an unwavering conviction that had been building within me for months. Gregory, I said, have you ever thought about the impact we could have? Look out there. There's so much need, so much we could do to make a difference in people's lives. I felt a tremor in my voice, a mix of hope and frustration that had become all too familiar in our conversations lately. Gregory barely looked up from his newspaper, his indifference a wall between us that seemed to grow taller with each passing day. His response was cold, dripping with self satisfaction. Carol, we're living comfortably. Why look for more problems? We have more than enough. I felt a pang in my chest, a mixture of disappointment and anger that threatened to overwhelm me. Just then, Michael, our employee, appeared with fresh coffee, momentarily interrupting the tension that had been building between us. I turned to Michael, my heart immediately softening as I saw the worry lines etched on his young face. Michael, I asked gently, how's your mother? I heard the surgery went well, but please, if you need any additional financial assistance, don't hesitate to let us know. We're here for you. I could feel the warmth of compassion flowing through me, a stark contrast to the chill emanating from Gregory. Gregory seized the interruption as an opportunity to change the subject, his voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. He told Michael he expected his efficiency to match our generosity, reminding him of the constant demands of our household and the need for speed. I could hardly bear to listen, the disparity in our values never more apparent than in that moment. With a heavy sigh, I looked at Gregory, my eyes brimming with a mix of sadness and disappointment. It's not about returns, Gregory, I pleaded, my voice thick with emotion. It's about compassion, about our humanity. Don't you see? Kindness and empathy come from helping without expecting anything in return. Even as I spoke, I knew in my heart that my words were falling on deaf ears. Gregory stared into the distance, his gaze lost in the vastness of the city before us, a city he saw only in terms of profit and loss. His response was cold, calculated. That's how the world works, Carol. It's survival. Everyone has to look out for themselves. If you don't, no one else will. With that, he dismissed Michael to check on breakfast, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. But the gulf between us, the fundamental difference in our principles, felt wider than ever. As the day wore on, I found myself alone in the living room, lost in deep contemplation. The morning's conversation with Gregory replayed in my mind, leaving me questioning not just my husband's priorities, but the direction of my own life. Gregory had retreated to his study, ostensibly to manage the finances of our family business, LE Constructions, a major urban development company. In his absence, I grappled with the depth of my discontent, the silence of the room amplifying my inner turmoil. It's not just about money, I whispered to myself, the words a quiet affirmation of the conviction growing within me. It's about making a contribution, about making a difference. This moment of solitude was rare for me, a brief clarity amidst the confusion of my thoughts.
Meanwhile, Gregory immersed himself in the company's calculations and plans. He sat before a mountain of paperwork and a computer screen emitting a cold glow, strategizing ways to increase their wealth. For Gregory, life was measured in profits and losses, and nothing was left to chance. If Carol can't understand this, it's my duty to secure our future, he told himself, justifying his actions as necessary to maintain their standard of living. His resolve to continue down this path was unwavering, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation.
As the day wore on, I found myself wrestling with growing concerns about Gregory. The thought of investigating my husband's actions hadn't yet crossed my mind, but I was desperately searching for a way to reconnect with him. Perhaps, I thought, I could reignite that tiny spark of compassion and empathy hidden beneath his indifferent exterior. It was like trying to find a flicker of warmth in a winter storm, but I had to try. Maybe it's time we have an honest conversation, I mused, my heart heavy with hope and trepidation. I clung to the idea that through open dialogue, I might understand what had happened to Gregory, what was really going on beneath the surface. But a part of me doubted whether he was ready to show such vulnerability. It was like expecting a stone to suddenly become soft and pliable, unlikely, but not impossible. I clung to the idea that through open dialogue, I might understand what had happened to Gregory, what was really going on beneath the surface. I stood up, my legs shaky, but my resolve firm, and made my way to Gregory's room, ready to confront him. I was determined to express my anxieties and find a middle ground between us. It felt like I was preparing for battle, but one fought with words and emotions instead of weapons. I can't just stand by and watch, I told myself, my inner voice growing stronger with each step. We're drifting further and further apart. There's more to life than this house, than money. Some things can't be bought. I repeated these words in my mind like a mantra, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. A part of me hoped that this confrontation might mark the beginning of a new chapter in our marriage. But as I approached Gregory's study, I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the door handle. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear Gregory on the phone, his voice drifting out into the hallway. He was discussing future plans, financial moves, investments, his voice filled with an emotion I had rarely heard from him. I stood there, frozen, as a sudden wave of anxiety washed over me. Do I really know this man I've chosen to share my life with? The question echoed in my mind, growing louder with each passing second. It was like a shadow spreading within me, casting doubt on everything I thought I knew. With a quiet sigh, I retreated, my resolve to confront him crumbling under the weight of my internal conflict. As night descended upon the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that greater challenges lay ahead.
The day began like any other ordinary day in the Smith household, but Gregory seemed to have something planned. He was in the kitchen, holding a box of painkillers. These belonged to Carol, who took them every morning for her severe migraines. Unfortunately, my wife is no longer in a state to care about our family business, Gregory muttered to himself. She's become too good, too patient. It's time to take care of her so she won't be in the way anymore. As he spoke these chilling words, Gregory poured an excessive amount of pills into a glass.
I remember that day so vividly, it's etched into my memory like a scar. Gregory came into my room, his face a mask of concern that I now know was entirely false. He approached me with a glass in his hand, telling me he'd brought my medication so I wouldn't have to get up. I can still see the glass in his hand, the water slightly cloudy with what I thought was just my usual dose of painkillers. How naive I was, how trusting. I smiled at him, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. I told him how happy I was that he seemed to be caring for me again, that despite our recent arguments, it felt like we were starting to understand each other once more. Those words taste bitter in my mouth now, knowing what I know. I drank the contents of the glass in one gulp, not knowing I was swallowing more than just medication. The day continued as normal in our household, the calm before the storm, you might say. I was alone in the living room when it hit me. The pain was sudden and sharp, unlike anything I'd felt before. It was as if my body was rebelling against me, punishing me for my trust in Gregory. I now know it was the excessive medication he had given me, but at that moment, all I knew was fear. I stumbled, reaching out for something, anything to steady myself. The room was spinning, the familiar surroundings of our home becoming a twisted, nightmarish version of themselves. In my panic, I called out for Gregory, my voice urgent and scared. Even then, in my moment of need, I still turned to him for help.
Gregory, in his office next door, heard Carol's desperate cries clearly but remained seated, making no move to help. A calculated hesitation dominated him as he considered the implications of his actions. This might solve all my problems at once, Gregory thought, justifying his abandonment of Carol. At that moment, Michael, who had been working outside, heard Carol's weak cries for help and rushed to her aid. He found Carol collapsed, struggling desperately to maintain consciousness, and immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. Without wasting a second, Michael called for an ambulance, displaying the urgency and concern that Gregory lacked. "Ma'am, I'm here with you. Help is on the way," Michael reassured Carol, holding her hand firmly, demonstrating loyalty and devotion that starkly contrasted with Gregory's coldness. When the paramedics arrived, Gregory approached them with a feigned look of concern, attempting to steer the conversation in his favor. "Please, help her. She suddenly fell ill. I was in my office and came running the moment I heard her voice," Gregory said with a trembling voice, trying to inject urgency and worry he didn't actually feel. "She's everything to me. Please do everything you can," he added, his gaze shifting between the paramedics and Carol, not out of concern but to gauge how his performance was being received. He understood that the situation required him to show husbandly concern, even if his heart wasn't as involved as his words suggested. As Carol was taken to the hospital, Gregory's true nature began to reveal itself, apparent not only to Michael, who watched with a mix of shock and contempt, but also to Gregory himself. At the hospital, while doctors and nurses rushed to save Carol, Gregory stood isolated, trapped in his selfish thoughts. What if she doesn't make it through this? It might not be such a bad thing, he calculated, more concerned about how it would affect his future and that of the Smith family than Carol's well-being. Michael remained by Carol's side, a pillar of support, further highlighting the stark contrast with Gregory. One genuinely concerned for Carol's health, the other consumed by his ambitious calculations. The emerging situation raised suspicions that Gregory's inaction was not mere coincidence but intentional, casting doubt on the true nature of the Smith household and Gregory's character for the first time. In the sterile hospital hallway, Gregory approached Michael, who sat worried with his head bowed. Michael was clearly anxious about Carol's condition, sitting rigidly in the hard chair. Gregory, with a calculated expression, decided it was time to speak. Michael, you understand, don't you? If anything happens to Carol, the situation here will change, Gregory said in a low voice, probing Michael's reaction while trying not to reveal too much of his true intentions. Michael stared at Gregory expressionlessly, but his eyes were sharp. Gregory, right now, Carol's health is the most important thing to me. She's always been kind to us. I just hope she recovers quickly, Michael replied. Gregory forced a smile, trying to appear sincere. Of course, Michael. You're right, but we need to think about the future too. Carol is strong, but we don't know what might happen, Gregory said, pretending to be worried but falling far short of genuine emotion. This conversation revealed Gregory's true nature. He was primarily concerned about financial and personal impacts, while Michael genuinely worried about Carol's health and well-being. Michael stood up, his posture demonstrating unwavering loyalty to Carol. Gregory, let's focus on her recovery. That's the only future we should be thinking about now. Carol's health is the most important thing right now, Michael responded, clearly rejecting Gregory's insinuations. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a doctor to report on Carol's condition. As Carol began to recover, Gregory quickly turned his attention to the doctor, leaving Michael with his own worries. As the doctor approached, Gregory quickly put on a concerned expression, ready to inquire about Carol's condition. Doctor, how is she? Will she be all right? Gregory asked, his voice tinged with desperation that, to a careful ear, sounded superficial. The doctor, accustomed to family anxieties, responded in a professional yet comforting tone. Your wife is stable for now, but we'll need to monitor her closely for the next few hours. She had a severe collapse, but we're doing everything we can. Michael, who had been silent until then, spoke up with sincere concern. Doctor, is there anything we can do for her right now? The doctor looked at Michael, noting the earnestness in his voice. Right now, your support is crucial. We'll keep a close watch and inform you immediately of any changes. Gregory, pretending to absorb the information, responded, I understand, doctor. Please let us know if anything changes. If there's anything you need, just say the word. His words were appropriate, but they lacked the emotional depth of Michael's, highlighting the difference in their true concerns. As Carol recovered in the hospital, Gregory quietly began making plans. Carol's situation was both a crisis and an opportunity, and Gregory was determined to exploit the latter to its fullest. His expression was thoughtful, almost indifferent, as he considered his options. Gregory summoned Michael to his home office, a grand space reflecting success and power, symbolizing what Gregory valued most. Michael, I need you to understand this delicate situation. With Carol in the hospital, all the responsibilities of the house and business fall on me. It's an extremely heavy burden to bear alone. You understand, don't you? Gregory began, carefully choosing his words. Michael stood in front of Gregory's desk, listening attentively. His expression was blank, but he knew Gregory rarely did anything that wasn't in his self-interest. I understand, sir. What can I do to help? Michael asked, his loyalty to Carol unwavering despite Gregory's demands. Gregory leaned forward, interlacing his fingers. Michael, I need you to be my eyes and ears. If anyone asks about what happened, I want you to relay to me any information about why Carol suddenly collapsed. This is crucial. We need to control the narrative here. Gregory's instructions were clear. He wanted to swiftly quash any doubts about his role or absence in the incident before Michael could notice. However, Michael was already suspicious of the truth. Michael nodded, his expression unchanged. I'll do whatever is necessary, sir. However, my main concern is that Carol receives all the support she needs to recover, and that you receive similar support. Michael's response was carefully measured, showing support for Gregory while maintaining his primary devotion to Carol's well-being. After leaving Gregory's office, Michael walked down the quiet hallway of the mansion, pondering the recent conversation. Gregory's request not only put Michael in an uncomfortable position but also raised questions about his employer's true intentions. Why is Gregory so obsessed with controlling what others think? Michael wondered. If he has nothing to hide, why does he need to monitor conversations so carefully? Michael's loyalty to Carol prompted him to consider his next moves carefully. He knew that any misstep could put both himself and Carol in danger, especially if Gregory began to suspect that Michael wasn't entirely on his side. Perhaps it's time to observe more closely, Michael thought, deciding to use his position not only to fulfill Gregory's orders but also to protect Carol as much as possible. He also considered the power dynamics in the household and how they might shift if Carol couldn't resume her normal role. While his main concern was Carol's health, the impact of her absence was significant and complex. What will become of us without Carol? Everything she's built. She needs to recover quickly. And I intend to do everything I can to ensure things proceed as she would want them to. With this resolve, Michael decided to visit Carol in the hospital that day to discuss important matters.
As the soft light of dusk filtered through the curtains of my hospital room, I found myself lost in thought. My body felt weak, but my mind was racing, particularly about the people in my life. Gregory, my husband, occupied most of my thoughts, and I couldn't help but question everything. Does he truly love me? Is he really supporting me? I asked myself, my heart heavy with doubt. Especially now, when I'm so vulnerable, does he understand what I'm going through? It felt like we'd been speaking different languages for so long, and the realization sent a chill through me. With each passing day, my uncertainty about Gregory grew stronger, like a shadow lengthening at sunset. Then my thoughts turned to Michael, our employee, who had become like family over the years. His loyalty and care always went beyond his duties, and I found myself comparing his actions to Gregory's. The paramedics had mentioned it was Michael who called them, not my husband. Although Gregory never seemed particularly fond of Michael, I couldn't help but think how special he was to our family. He deserved all the support we'd given him and more. I hoped Gregory was treating him well, but a nagging doubt persisted. As I pondered these thoughts, a wave of gratitude washed over me for Michael's constant, honest presence in our lives. The stark difference between Gregory and Michael's actions when I collapsed raised more questions than answers, leaving me feeling lost and confused. Just then, as if summoned by my thoughts, there was a gentle knock at the door. Michael entered with an encouraging smile that immediately brought a sense of comfort I didn't realize I desperately needed. He asked how I was feeling, his words laced with genuine concern. I couldn't help but smile back at him, feeling a warmth spread through me despite my physical discomfort. I'm getting better, little by little, Michael, I replied, my voice weak but filled with heartfelt gratitude. It's all thanks to you. Your quick action saved my life. I'm so grateful. I paused for a moment, gathering my strength, then continued. Gregory didn't give me a chance to ask before, but I want to know, how is your mother doing after her surgery? Please, tell me everything. As Michael began to share about his mother's recovery, explaining how she was doing well thanks to the financial support I had provided, I felt a sense of purpose return to me. His eyes shimmered with gratitude as he spoke, and I realized that even in my weakened state, I could still make a difference in people's lives. I listened attentively to Michael, feeling a sense of satisfaction that I had been able to help him and his family. "And how's your son doing?" I asked, genuinely interested in every aspect of Michael's life. Michael's face lit up with pride as he told me about his son Matthew starting his new school that week. He reminded me that I had helped find this good school for Matthew, and I felt a warm glow of remembrance. Michael shared how nervous Matthew had been on his first day, but now he had made friends and even joined the school's soccer team. I couldn't help but smile as Michael told me, his voice full of fatherly pride, that Matthew was talking about becoming a professional player, even at just 10 years old. The joy in Michael's voice was palpable as he continued, explaining how my kindness had made such a difference to his family. He described Matthew coming home each day, bubbling over with stories, dreams, and energy. Despite my condition, I felt my heart lighten at the news of Matthew's happiness and how well he was adapting. "That's wonderful, Michael," I said, my voice weak but filled with genuine happiness. "I remember how worried you were about the school and soccer. That's fantastic. Children need activities like that to grow up healthy and happy. You must be so proud." I paused for a moment, gathering my strength before continuing. "Please tell Matthew I'm rooting for him. I'm looking forward to watching one of his games when I recover." I meant every word. The happiness of Michael's family had always been important to me. "After all, Michael," I added, "family is the most precious thing we have." My interest and affection for Michael's family was genuine, a clear reflection of my kindness and generosity. As our conversation progressed, we moved on to discuss the events that led to my collapse. I shared my anxieties and questions about what had happened, still trying to piece together the full picture. Michael listened quietly, not pushing for details, just being there for me. He emphasized that the most important thing now was my recovery, assuring me he was there and that Gregory felt the same way. His words provided the reassurance I so desperately needed. I sighed softly before asking Michael a difficult question, my expression a mix of worry and care. "Michael," I began, my voice weak but filled with iron determination. "I need to understand what happened that day, from the beginning. How did Gregory react? Did he come to help me right away? I'm trying to piece things together, but there are gaps I can't fill." I needed these answers, not just for peace of mind, but to understand Gregory's actions, or lack thereof, in that crucial moment. Michael took a deep breath, aware that the truth was delicate and potentially hurtful. He explained that when I first fell ill, he had been in the garden and heard my cries for help. He rushed inside immediately, but Gregory, who was in his office, didn't seem to react as quickly. Michael hesitated before admitting that Gregory wasn't the first to come to my side. He was. As Michael spoke, I felt my heart grow heavy. The realization that Gregory's actions might not have been those of a caring, loving husband was devastating. "Michael, this is upsetting," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't want to believe Gregory didn't act as he should have, but something feels wrong." I paused, gathering my resolve before making a request that I knew was significant. "Please, I need you to do something for me. It's very important." My expression was serious, reflecting the gravity of the situation. I need you to keep an eye on Gregory. Not obviously, but carefully observe if anything seems off. I trust you to report back to me. I'm not accusing him, but I need to understand what's happening around me, especially now. Michael nodded, recognizing the weight of my request. His voice was steady and filled with determination as he promised his loyalty and vowed to protect my safety above all else. He assured me that I had the right to know the truth and that he would do everything in his power to ensure that, no matter what. The sincerity in his voice and the resolve in his eyes left no doubt about his intentions and commitment. It was clear that this wasn't just about duty, it was born from a deep respect and care for me.
Meanwhile, Gregory sat once again in his office, lost in thought. His view of his wife had changed, and the soft light from the desk lamp cast long shadows over the scattered papers on his desk. Each sheet was evidence of the many businesses and investments under his control. But at that moment, his plans were taking a more personal and sinister turn. Gregory twirled a pen between his fingers, deep in contemplation. He was aware that things had become more complicated since Carol's accident. Her recovery in the hospital and the whispers of doubt among their social circle and family were forcing him to carefully reconsider his next move. "I need to act smart," he muttered to himself. "I don't want anyone blaming me for what happened to Carol. No one probably thinks it's my fault, but I can fool them all." Gregory pondered, his brow furrowed in concentration. Direct action is too risky now. There are too many eyes watching me, too many doubts. I need a more cautious approach. He opened a drawer and pulled out some documents. These papers contain detailed information about Carol's investments. He stared intently at the numbers, considering several possibilities. "I think I can easily make it look like an accident," he mused. "Or perhaps a tragic event related to Carol's recent poor health." There was no hesitation in Gregory's voice, and his eyes reflected unwavering ambition. Suddenly, the office door opened, and Gregory quickly hid the documents, transforming his calculated expression into one of tired concern. It was Michael, coming to inform Gregory that dinner was ready and to check if he needed anything. Michael asked, eyeing Gregory's fabricated emotions, if he should eat something despite not being satisfied with Carol's situation. Gregory responded immediately, his words carefully crafted to reinforce the image of a grief-stricken, responsible husband. He thanked Michael and expressed trust in his ability to keep the household running smoothly during this difficult time. After Michael left the room, Gregory returned to his nefarious planning. He knew Michael was loyal to Carol and felt this could potentially hinder his plans. Michael could be a problem, Gregory thought. I need to keep him close but avoid arousing suspicion. I don't want anyone interfering, and I know this man could delay my plans. In his mind, Gregory was formulating a plan to free himself from suspicion and solidify his control over what he considered rightfully his.
As I lay in my hospital bed, a gentle breeze wafted through the open window, softening the sterile atmosphere of the room. My thoughts constantly drifted to Michael and his unwavering dedication. I could still vividly recall the genuine concern etched on his face during his last visit. Michael is more than just an employee, I mused to myself. He's a friend, a guardian, and someone I trust without question. I found myself pondering how to express my gratitude to Michael, searching for a way to make a significant impact on his life. Just as he had contributed so much to mine, I wanted to offer him a reward that matched his dedication. Several ideas swirled in my mind, like leaves caught in that gentle breeze. Perhaps I could support Matthew's education fund, ensuring a bright future for Michael's son. Or maybe I could offer Michael a stake in the family business, acknowledging his trust and role. I couldn't help but imagine the joy on Michael's face when he'd receive such news. At first, he might look surprised, even disbelieving, but gradually he'd understand that his devotion hadn't gone unnoticed. I should give him something that not only changes his life, but also ensures his family's happiness, I thought, just as he's done for my family. With each passing moment, my resolve to find the perfect reward for Michael grew stronger. However, I knew that whatever plan I chose, I'd need to execute it carefully and discreetly, especially considering the current situation and Gregory's presence. Caution was paramount. I wrestled with how to convey my intentions to Michael and how to make him understand I was serious. I wanted him to know this wasn't just a gift, but a recognition of his indispensable place in our family. I need to tell Michael that this isn't just a present, I affirmed to myself. He needs to understand he's an irreplaceable part of our family, that his kindness has been a light in our darkest days. As I lay there, my conviction in this decision only grew stronger.
Meanwhile, Gregory found himself alone in the room he once shared with Carol. The space that was once filled with laughter and conversation now echoed only with his plans and anxieties. Gregory paced back and forth in the room, muttering to himself, the next move must be executed with extreme caution and precision. He whispered, contemplating the complexity of his situation, everything must appear natural. It must seem as if her already weakened state is the cause. The key is to completely conceal my interference. From the doctor's eyes, from everyone's eyes. Sitting at his desk, leaning over some documents, Gregory mentally outlined his plan, particularly considering family members like Michael who might be watching more closely than usual. First and foremost, he realized it was crucial to clearly understand the treatment Carol was receiving. He needed to find a good reason to be thoroughly involved. Perhaps feigning a sudden interest in the details of Carol's recovery would be best. As Gregory considered how to use his influence to access medical information, he thought about ways to appear as a truly devoted husband, earnestly concerned about his wife's health. He then considered the importance of subtly manipulating Carol's surroundings. This was to ensure his plan would proceed without leaving traces of direct intervention. There might be ways to indirectly influence medical decisions, he thought. Perhaps he could plant concerns about allergies or pre-existing conditions Carol supposedly had. Gregory imagined ways to sow doubt among the healthcare professionals in charge. He also knew he needed to be wary of anyone trying to intervene. To ensure he was above suspicion when questions arose, he figured he needed to appear as supportive as possible while seemingly not directly involved in her care. He sought ways to maintain contact with the doctors while avoiding suspicion. Lastly, he considered the importance of monitoring Michael and others who might be loyal to Carol. He needed to ensure Michael continued to see him as a worried individual, not as a threat. Gregory planned to present himself as concerned, not threatening. As he strategized ways to prevent Michael from interfering with his plans, Gregory was acutely aware of the delicate balance between maintaining his public and private image while executing his hidden intentions.
When Michael entered my hospital room, his face etched with worry. His expression was impossible for me to ignore, a mirror of the concern I felt deep within my own heart. As he sat beside my bed, his words came carefully, as if he were treading on thin ice. He told me he'd been observing Gregory for the past few days, just as I'd asked him to. My breath caught in my throat as he continued, explaining that Gregory had been spending long hours secluded in his office, making private phone calls. Michael's voice was laced with sincerity and concern, as he admitted he didn't want to jump to conclusions, but Gregory's behavior suggested he might be planning something. I could feel the weight of his words settling on my chest, heavier than any medical equipment attached to me. He understood how difficult this was for me to hear, but reminded me that I had entrusted him with this task to be my eyes and ears. As I absorbed Michael's words, my heart sank at the possibility that Gregory might be plotting against me. It was a thought that chilled me to the bone, colder than the sterile hospital air around us. Despite my physical weakness, I managed to respond with a steady voice, drawing strength from somewhere deep within. I told Michael how much his loyalty and courage in bringing me this information meant to me, more than I could express. The gravity of the situation settled over us like a heavy blanket as I continued. If Gregory was indeed planning something, we needed to act to protect ourselves. I paused, gathering my strength, feeling like a marathon runner on their last mile. I asked Michael to speak with my doctors to ensure they wouldn't consider any information from Gregory without checking with him first. I assured him that I would confirm this instruction with them myself. My trust in Michael's judgment was complete, a beacon of light in the darkness that seemed to be closing in around me. Michael nodded, understanding the gravity of my request. His promise to speak with the medical team and do everything in his power to protect my health and safety was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. When he gently took my hand, the gesture spoke volumes of his support and understanding. His assurance that I wasn't facing this alone, that we were in this together no matter what happened, brought tears to my eyes. Despite my lingering worries, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me for Michael. I thanked him, telling him that his help and loyalty during this difficult time were like a light guiding me through a storm. Even though I didn't know what Gregory might be planning, I felt stronger knowing Michael was by my side. My words reflected not just my affection for Michael, but also a newly strengthened resolve despite the uncertainties ahead. With Michael beside me, I felt I could face whatever challenges were coming our way, like a tree standing firm against the winds of a hurricane.
Hours after the doctors received instructions about Gregory, Gregory himself faced the challenge of preparing and executing his own actions in the hospital. He had spent sleepless nights reviewing every detail, necessary conversation, and precise movement. Despite his meticulous preparation, anxiety swelled within him, and he couldn't shake off a sense of tension. Everything must be perfect. Otherwise, my lifelong access, all our company's assets, could crumble, he muttered to himself as he walked down the hospital corridor. His expression was serious, concealing the storm of thoughts inside. Gregory approached the doctors with a facade of concern, his planned footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. "Doctor, I've been thinking a lot about Carol's treatment. I'm concerned. Are you sure she doesn't have any allergies to the medications? I feel like she mentioned allergic reactions in the past," Gregory said, attempting to plant doubt in the doctors' minds. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a calm expression and insightful eyes, answered patiently. He explained that they had thoroughly checked Carol's medical history before starting treatment and were currently monitoring her. The doctor added that they hadn't observed any side effects so far but thanked Gregory for his concern and assured him they would consider it. Feeling his strategy crumbling, Gregory raised his voice slightly. "But listen, I know she said it. We can't ignore even the smallest risk." His attempt to remain calm was failing, and frustration was beginning to show in his voice. The doctor, surprised by Gregory's commotion and indignation, responded that while he understood Gregory's concerns, Carol's safety was their top priority. He explained that medical decisions must be based on concrete evidence and invited Gregory to provide more detailed information about the alleged allergy. Realizing his tactics had failed, Gregory tried to back down. "I'm just thinking of her. Please, keep an extra eye out." His voice now carried traces of defeat, and the reality of the situation was becoming clear. The doctor professionally explained that they were always vigilant and, following instructions, would consult directly with Michael about any changes or questions regarding Carol's treatment. He mentioned that Michael had been designated as an additional contact for these issues. Gregory raised his voice, openly showing his indignation. He questioned why Michael was receiving these instructions and why he was involved, insisting that as Carol's husband, everything should go through him. Gregory's outburst in the hospital corridor was noticeable, drawing the attention of other patients and staff. Everyone present was focused on Gregory's reaction. The cautious and concerned doctors exchanged meaningful glances. They asked Gregory to calm down, acknowledging the difficult situation but emphasizing the importance of staying calm for Carol's sake. Gregory barely noticed when Michael, who was visiting the hospital, arrived. Michael joined the conversation, having heard part of the confrontation as he approached the corridor where everything was happening. With a worried and shocked expression, Michael asked what was going on. As Michael tried to understand the situation, looking between Gregory and the doctor, Gregory saw him and was overcome with even greater anger. "Ah, so here's our dear, beloved Michael. The man everyone listens to more than the husband of my wife," Gregory said sarcastically. Gregory's anger prevented him from maintaining any pretense of calm or rationality. He sarcastically told Michael that he had a plan to solve all his problems, but Michael and his loyalty were getting in the way. Michael remained calm in the face of Gregory's fierce accusations, responding firmly that whatever Gregory's plan was, if it needed to be hidden or was causing such irritation, it probably wasn't good, especially when there were people genuinely concerned about Carol's health. At that moment, blinded by anger and frustration, Gregory unintentionally revealed his plan. He told Michael that his plan had been simple and perfect, but now with Michael's intervention, the doctors were listening to every word. Gregory questioned how he could prevent Carol from interfering in his life and their company's operations again, lamenting that his initial medical plan had been perfect but was ruined by Michael's excessive goodwill. Gregory's words exposed not only his intentions but also his willingness to harm Carol to achieve his goals. Michael, understanding the gravity of Gregory's unintended confession, acted quickly. He told the doctor they'd heard enough and that the police needed to be called immediately, as this was a confession of a crime that couldn't be ignored. His voice was calm but urgent, and the seriousness of the situation was clear to everyone. The doctors, fully recognizing Gregory's threat to Carol, immediately agreed. One of them used the hallway phone to alert the authorities. By the time the police arrived, Gregory, still in the hallway, was arrested on the spot as the reality of his words and the consequences of his actions slowly sank in. Gregory spent 2 weeks in a cold, uncomfortable cell, his own words being the key to his arrest, while Michael and the doctors gave their testimonies. Dim light filtered through the iron bars, illuminating the space and casting shadows on his face. Sitting on the concrete bench, Gregory's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a guard. "Letter for you," the guard said in an indifferent tone. With trembling hands, Gregory opened the envelope to find 2 documents. The first was a divorce paper signed by Carol, its words cutting deeper than the sharpest blade. The phrase, "Trust once broken is irreparable," particularly resonated in his heart. The second document was an official notice of his dismissal from all positions and shares in the company. Feeling the weight of his actions, Gregory muttered to himself, "How did it come to this?" Gregory began to speak aloud, as if trying to convince himself or an imaginary friend of the situation. He said that Carol had really done it, taking everything from him, his freedom, his company, his marriage. His voice was a mixture of anger and despair. After a moment of silence, Gregory stood up and began pacing in the small cell. Each step echoed with the weight of his past choices. He said he should have predicted this, that he had underestimated Carol and Michael. His frustration was evident in his words and body movements. Finally, Gregory stopped and stared at the iron bars separating him from the outside world. With strong determination, he declared that this wouldn't be the end, that he wouldn't let it end. He said he would find a way to come back and reclaim what was rightfully his. Although the reality of the situation had already dimmed the spark of hope in his eyes, he faced years of imprisonment and a situation where he held no power, either inside or outside the prison.
I was discharged from the hospital, returning home with a renewed sense of strength and hope. I invited Michael to join me in the garden of our estate, a place that had always brought me peace and tranquility. As the afternoon sun bathed the space in golden light, I felt it mirrored the hope blossoming in my heart. With Michael seated before me, my voice was firm but filled with gratitude as I expressed how thankful I was for his presence during the most challenging times. His loyalty and courage, I told him, had not only saved me, but also demonstrated the true power of human kindness. I couldn't help but smile at Michael's humble response, as he insisted he'd only done what anyone would have in the same situation. But I knew better. Michael had done so much more, and I was determined to ensure a bright future for him and his family. I shared my plans to fully support his son Matthew's education and his dream of becoming a soccer player. Moreover, I wanted Michael to take on a more active role in the company as a director, participating in decision-making and sharing in the profits. I'll never forget the look of emotion on Michael's face as he struggled to find the right words to respond. When he finally spoke, his voice thick with gratitude, he promised to not only live up to this trust, but to work hard to further my vision for the company. As the evening turned to twilight, Michael and I sat together, contemplating the promising future we were beginning to build. It wasn't just about success and prosperity, it was about hope, renewal, and proving the power of human resilience and goodwill. Months passed, and while Gregory languished in prison with his regrets, Michael and I worked together to transform not just the company, but the surrounding community as well. The opening of our first soccer field was a resounding success, celebrated with a grand event that brought together employees, families, and community members. As I watched the children play on the new field, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This is what leadership means, I shared with Michael, who stood beside me, beaming as he watched his own son run across the field. We hadn't just saved a company from an uncertain future, we had built a legacy of hope and opportunity. In that moment, I knew we had created something truly special, something that would outlast us all.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Your support inspires us and empowers us to continue sharing touching stories almost every day. Don't miss the next amazing narration coming to the screen. We sincerely appreciate your support. Until next time.